What happened to you?
I just wanted to help.
Jackson returns to a silent smart house. On the camera, a small figure at the gate. He finds a shivering child clutching a filthy rag, whispering that her arms hurt. He speaks softly, offers warmth, keeps space, a neighbor watching through glass. Can one careful choice rewrite a life? Will this stained rag become a ribbon of trust? Keep watching. Jackson's smart gate slid open to a quiet, winter blue street. He parked, checked the security app, and froze. At the gate, a small figure stood shaking. He zoomed the thumbnail. Not a delivery driver, a child. Night wind pushed at a metal bucket beside her. A filthy rag hung over the rim. He pressed the intercom, kept his voice low. "Hey there, you okay?" The child turned toward the speaker. Her whisper scratched the cold. "My arms hurt." His thumb hovered over the gate control. He took 2 slow steps, palms open, and stopped well back. "I hear you. I'm Jackson. This is a safe street. Do you want to come inside where it's warm?" She nodded once. Sweatshirt too thin, sneakers wet, fingers locked around the rag like a lifeline. He opened the gate, let it swing on its motor. He didn't touch the bucket. He didn't reach for her. "Front door's there," he said gently. "Yellow porch light. I'll walk beside you." They went up the path together, 5 careful yards apart. The house recognized his phone and lit the walkway in warm pools. "You're not in trouble," he added. On the porch, heat lamps hummed on. She glanced at the camera under the eave, then at the doormat woven with a copper key. The lock chime sounded and the door eased open. The foyer smelled like lemon peel and clean wood. "Shoes if you want," Jackson said, keeping his voice calm. "No rules tonight." She set the bucket by the bench. The rag slipped, hit the floor with a wet thud. She flinched, breath catching, as if bracing for a shout. "Accidents happen here," Jackson said. "We wipe them up and keep going." He crouched, not close, and offered a folded towel. She watched his hands, then the towel, then the floor. Slow, careful. Together they lifted the rag into the towel. He pointed to the step pedal bin. Small things, but a map. "Do you have a name?" he asked. After a beat, "Ellie." "Good to meet you, Ellie." He let the words land. "Kitchen's warm. There's a stool and some toast." "It smells different," she murmured, looking down the hall. "Not like bleach." "Lemon," he said, "and cinnamon if I find it." Under cabinet lights clicked on as they entered the kitchen. He set a plate on the island and slid over a napkin with a red stitched border. Ellie climbed onto the stool. The rag stayed folded tight in her fist. He nodded toward the sink. "We can wash that if you like." "Maybe later." "Okay." He filled a mug with warm water and wrapped his hands around it, showing how heat can be held without harm. "Do your arms hurt now?" "Only when I carry the bucket, or when they make me hurry." "Thank you for telling me," he said. He pointed toward the guest bath where a soft mirror light glowed. "There's soap that doesn't sting. We can rinse and rest." His phone pinged. Gate camera. He checked once. Empty sidewalk, a car sliding past, the bucket's shadow long and thin. He set the phone face down. "Why my gate, Ellie?" "You had a sign," she said, thumb circling the rag. "At Christmas. It said, 'You are safe here.'" He pictured the cardboard he'd painted gold for the toy drive, taped to the fence, forgotten until spring. He hadn't known someone memorized the words. Jackson glanced to the foyer mirror where the copper key's shape reflected, to the bucket by the bench, to the rag in Ellie's hand. A map, and maybe a promise. "You are safe here," he said again. Quiet, certain. She nodded. The house hummed like it was listening. Down the hall, the guest room lamp blinked on with the timer. Outside, beyond the hedges, a car door shut. Ellie's fingers tightened on the rag. Jackson turned toward the sound and the waiting gate, the words still warm in the room. The foyer light glowed warm against the storm outside. Jackson held the door open, careful not to move too close. "You can come in," he said gently. "It's warmer here." The boy hesitated, clutching the rag and bucket as though they were shields. His thin arms trembled. Jackson took a step back, lowering his tone. "No one here is going to hurt you." Finally, the boy crossed the threshold. The marble floor seemed too clean under his worn sneakers. He dropped the sandwich he'd been hiding in his pocket. It splattered onto the tile, mayo and bread sliding apart. His shoulders jerked. He braced as if expecting anger. Jackson's voice stayed calm. "Accidents happen here. That's all." The boy blinked, confused, his lip trembling. No scolding came, just quiet, steady patience. Jackson walked toward the kitchen, returned with a towel, and placed it on the counter. "If you're hungry, there's more food in the fridge. You don't have to hide it." The boy didn't answer, only watched him warily. His gaze darted toward the glowing security panel on the wall, then back to the rag still clutched in his hand. Jackson crouched slightly, his tone even softer. "You don't have to explain yet. Safety comes before questions. Do you understand?" For the first time, the boy nodded. A small, fragile nod, but a beginning. Jackson gestured toward the hall. "There's a chair by the fire. Sit there until you feel your hands stop shaking." The boy obeyed, curling up in the oversized seat, watching flames flicker through the glass. Jackson lingered nearby, giving space yet making sure the child knew he wasn't alone. For the first time in years, Jackson's silent house breathed with another heartbeat. The fire crackled softly, throwing amber light across the boy's wary face. Jackson stood by the kitchen island, hands resting flat on the cool granite, unsure what to do next. He'd dealt with boardrooms and crises worth millions, but this was uncharted ground. Through the tall glass window, motion stirred across the street. Mrs. King, his retired neighbor, stood behind her curtains, hand lifted in a hesitant wave. Jackson frowned, then stepped onto the porch, leaving the boy warm by the fire. Mrs. King's door creaked open as he crossed the street. Her voice carried in the night air, low but urgent. "I've seen things, Jackson. Not once, not twice. Too many times." He slowed, listening carefully. She glanced toward the boy in his foyer, then back at Jackson. "That house across the way. Late nights. Chores in the yard when it's freezing. Buckets, scrubbing. Always shrinking when someone raises a hand. No laughter. No play." Her eyes softened. "That child doesn't know kindness when he sees it. That's why he flinched tonight." Jackson felt his throat tighten. "You're certain?" "I don't need certainty to know fear when I see it," she replied firmly. "I raised 3 kids. Worked 40 years as a teacher. Children carry their stories in their eyes." She touched his arm gently. "Whatever you do, document everything. Don't let this disappear." Back inside, Jackson found the boy still clutching the filthy rag as if it were proof of who he was supposed to be. Jackson crouched near, his voice steady but filled with something heavier now. "Ellie," he said softly, using the name the boy had given. "Neighbors care too. You're not invisible anymore." The boy blinked at him, confusion flickering in his gaze. His lips parted, but no words came. Only a shiver, as though the truth was too big to name. Jackson took out his phone, quietly snapping a photo of the rag, the bucket, and the small hands raw from work. Evidence, not just memory. In that moment, Jackson understood. Tonight wasn't an accident. It was a turning point, and someone, somewhere, was about to come knocking. Morning light filtered through the kitchen blinds, soft and cautious, like the boy himself. Jackson sat across from him at the table, coffee steaming between his hands. The rag, still damp from the night before, lay folded on the counter, a witness that couldn't speak. "May I see your hands?" Jackson asked, voice low, steady. The boy hesitated, eyes darting toward the door as if escape were the safer option. Finally, he placed his small palms on the table. The skin was red, lined with faint cracks, the kind that came from scrubbing with chemicals far too harsh for children. Jackson kept his breath measured. "Looks like you've been working hard. Too hard." The boy pulled back slightly. "It's nothing. Just cleaning." Jackson shook his head gently. "Hands like that don't come from nothing." He didn't press further. Instead, he pulled out his phone and called Monica, his sister. She answered on the second ring. "You never call before 9. "What's wrong?" "I need you to come by," Jackson said. "It's not an emergency, but it's important." Monica was a nurse. She knew when his voice carried weight. "On my way." While they waited, Jackson set a plate of pancakes on the table. The boy studied them as though they might vanish. "Go ahead," Jackson encouraged. "You don't have to ask here." The boy ate cautiously, like every bite was borrowed. When Monica arrived, she greeted Jackson with a raised eyebrow before turning to the boy. She knelt, her voice calm and clinical. "I'm Monica. I help kids feel better. May I look at your hands?" The boy glanced at Jackson, who nodded reassuringly. Slowly, he extended his arms. Monica's practiced eyes softened. "Chemical irritation, likely bleach or ammonia. These are not play injuries." She scribbled neutral notes in her pad. "Documented." Jackson leaned against the counter, heart pounding though his voice remained calm. "Thank you, Monica." The boy tugged the rag closer, whispering so faintly Jackson almost missed it. "It's all I had. To prove I was useful." Jackson crouched to his level, careful not to touch. "You don't need proof to matter here." For the first time, the boy's gaze lingered on him. Suspicion mixed with a fragile, flickering trust. Jackson knew then. This wasn't just about safety for a night. It was about giving the child words for the harm he had carried in silence. And words, once spoken, could never be taken back. The knock came sharp. 3 raps against the front door. Jackson froze mid-sentence. Monica, still flipping through her notes, looked up with a frown. The boy stiffened in his chair, clutching the rag tight against his chest. His eyes widened with a fear that spoke louder than words. Jackson moved quietly to the entryway, his steps slow and deliberate. Through the frosted glass he saw a woman in a pressed uniform. Housekeeper, not neighbor. Her chin lifted with practiced authority. When he opened the door a few inches, her tone was clipped. "That child belongs across the street. Bring him now." Jackson kept his voice even. "He's here tonight because he asked for help. If you have concerns, take them to the proper authorities." The woman's eyes hardened. "You don't understand. He's expected. You have no right." "I have every right to ensure a child isn't forced back without review," Jackson interrupted, calm but unyielding. "This conversation is over." He closed the door slowly but firmly. The boy whimpered, shrinking into the chair. Monica placed a reassuring hand near, not on, his arm. "It's all right. You're safe here tonight." Jackson leaned against the door, phone already in hand. He documented the exchange, time-stamped and filed. He sent the log to his secure drive with a note. "Police, Child Services, to be followed up." The boy whispered, "She always comes, always takes me back." Jackson crouched down so they were eye level. His voice carried steady weight. "Not tonight." Tonight the door closed. Tears welled, but didn't fall. The boy tightened his grip on the rag as though holding the last thread of his old life. Jackson looked at Monica, then back at the boy. "We're going to do this the right way, with people whose job is to listen and protect." Outside, footsteps retreated down the walk, fading into the night. But inside, something new settled, a fragile boundary, drawn in Jackson's foyer. The boy exhaled shakily. For the first time, he believed the promise might hold. By mid-morning, Jackson's front step echoed with another knock. Firmer, measured, not hostile. He opened the door to Officer Brooks, uniform pressed, calm eyes scanning the house. Beside him stood Ms. Harrow from Child Protective Services, a slim folder tucked under her arm. Jackson motioned them inside. The boy froze by the fireplace, rag clutched in hand. Jackson crouched, voice low. "These people are here to make sure you're safe, that's all." Monica, still in scrubs from her overnight shift, stepped forward with a clipboard. "I documented what I saw. No speculation, just clinical notes." She handed the file to Ms. Harrow, who nodded appreciatively. Officer Brooks spoke gently, his tone practiced for children. "Hey there, buddy. I'm here just to listen, not to scare. Do you feel okay sitting with Ms. Harrow for a few minutes?" The boy's gaze darted toward Jackson, searching for permission. Jackson gave a calm nod. Slowly, the boy slid off the chair and followed Ms. Harrow into the dining room, the rag still looped around his wrist. While they talked softly out of earshot, Brooks lowered his voice. "We've had concerns reported on that address before. No official findings yet. This changes things." Jackson exhaled, tension finally finding words. "He showed up last night, arms raw, terrified. Someone tried to collect him at my door." Brooks nodded, jotting notes. "You did right logging it. That's exactly the kind of record that matters in court." When Ms. Harrow returned, she closed the folder with care. "Given the neighbor's testimony, the medical notes, and last night's incident, I'm authorizing temporary placement here with you, Mr. Hale, pending a formal hearing." Jackson blinked. "You're saying he stays?" "For now, yes," she said. "It gives us time to investigate without putting him back where harm may continue." The boy looked up at Jackson, confusion written across his small features. I don't have to go back?" Jackson crouched to his level again. "Not tonight, not tomorrow, not until people who care for kids decide what's safe." For the first time, the boy's grip on the rag loosened. His small shoulders dropped just slightly, as though a lifetime's weight had shifted an inch. Monica squeezed Jackson's arm, her eyes tired but proud. "Now the lawful path begins, and you're not walking it alone." Outside, the winter sun broke weakly through the clouds, spilling light into a house that, for the first time in years, didn't feel empty. That night, Jackson carried fresh sheets into the guest room. The boy lingered at the doorway, still clutching the rag like a badge. Jackson spread the quilt across the bed and stepped back. "It's yours," he said simply. The boy sniffed the air, his small nose wrinkling. "It doesn't smell like bleach." Jackson's throat tightened at the remark. "No, just cotton, and maybe a little lavender." The boy shuffled in, fingers trailing across the nightstand where a lamp glowed softly. He touched the switch, startled when light dimmed and brightened at a tap. "It listens?" he whispered. Jackson smiled faintly. "Only when you want it to. You're in control here." At bedtime, Jackson leaned against the hallway wall, listening as the boy curled under the covers. Every so often, he peeked in. The child's eyes would dart open, searching, and Jackson would nod reassuringly. Then the eyes would close again, slower each time. Hours passed. Jackson remained in the hallway chair, laptop unopened, phone on silent. When the boy startled awake from a dream, Jackson spoke softly through the cracked door. "You're safe. Sleep." Gradually, the house, once sterile, humming only with automation, took on a different rhythm. The clink of a glass of warm milk on the nightstand, the shuffle of small feet on the carpet, the steady cadence of breath finally relaxing into slumber. Monica called to check in near midnight. "How's he holding up?" Jackson glanced at the dim glow spilling into the hall. "He hasn't let go of that rag, but he's here. He's not flinching at every sound." "That's the first step," she said gently. "Let him see you choose him, even in the small things." Jackson ended the call and sat back, exhaustion pulling at him, but something stronger anchoring him in place. For once, his house wasn't silent. It was alive with fragile trust, with the beginnings of routine. In the stillness, he realized, safety wasn't just about locked doors and logged reports. It was about presence. About showing up, hour by hour, until fear loosened its grip, And tonight, his house, his life, had started to feel human again. The next morning, sunlight streamed across the kitchen tiles, catching steam from a pan of scrambled eggs. The boy sat at the counter, shoulders still tense but eyes following Jackson's every movement. A knock at the door broke the calm. This one wasn't hesitant. It was sharp, deliberate. Jackson opened it to find Evelyn, the boy's legal guardian, dressed in a tailored coat, her posture rigid. Beside her stood a man in a navy suit, briefcase in hand. "We're here for the child," Evelyn declared smoothly, as though it were already settled. The boy stiffened on the stool, nearly toppling his glass of milk. Jackson raised a hand, steady and calm. "He's under temporary placement," he replied. "Child Protective Services authorized it. You'll need to wait for the proper review." The man cleared his throat, flashing papers from his briefcase. "My client retains guardianship rights. Any delay is unlawful." Jackson didn't flinch. "He'll be seen by a doctor and a social worker first. That's not negotiable." Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her mask of control cracking at the edges. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Hale. This interference will not reflect well on you." Jackson leaned against the doorframe, his voice steady. The mistake would be ignoring what's already documented. His hands, his fear, the neighbor's testimony. The system will see all of it. Behind him, the boy whispered, almost to himself, "Don't let them take me." Jackson caught Evelyn's stare, unblinking. "You should leave now. Your counsel can bring any concerns before the court. Until then, this house answers to care, not intimidation." The man adjusted his tie, muttered something about filings, and guided Evelyn back down the walk. She didn't look back, but her shoulders were stiff with fury. Jackson closed the door gently, then crouched near the boy. "They won't decide your future in a doorway," he said softly. "It'll happen where the truth gets heard." The boy nodded, clutching the rag again, but his breathing slowed. Through the window, Jackson watched Evelyn's car pull away, sunlight bouncing off its polished surface. The image of control was still there, but now it was cracking, and cracks, he knew, had a way of spreading until the whole picture broke apart. 2 days later, Jackson sat with the boy in the clinic's waiting room. The walls were painted with murals of forests and hot air balloons, but the child stayed hunched, rag wrapped tight around his wrist like a bandage. Jackson kept his voice low. "After this checkup, you'll know for sure your hands can heal." The sliding doors hissed open. Evelyn strode in, flanked by the same suited man. Her heels clicked hard against the tile, every eye in the room turning toward them. She forced a smile as though this were all routine. "There you are," she said, voice sugar-coated. "Time to come home." The boy froze, chair legs scraping the floor as he pressed back. Jackson stood, placing himself between them. "This isn't the place," he said firmly. "You know that." The lawyer opened his briefcase. "My client insists. You're obstructing." Before the boy could panic further, Officer Brooks stepped out from a side corridor, plain clothes, badge clipped at his belt. He'd been waiting. "That won't happen here," he said evenly. "There's a no-contact order until review. You both know it." Evelyn's smile faltered. "I'm his guardian. You can't." Brooks raised a hand. "You're here without authorization, attempting removal in a public clinic. That's coercion, and it's documented on security cameras." 2 building guards stepped closer, alert but calm. The waiting room, once filled with soft chatter, now buzzed with whispers. Parents pulled children close, eyes narrowing at Evelyn. Jackson knelt to the boy's level, keeping his tone steady. "See? You're not invisible. People are watching out for you." The boy's grip on the rag loosened just enough for his knuckles to show. His eyes lifted toward Jackson, fragile trust flickering there. Brooks gestured toward the exit. "Ma'am, sir, now." Evelyn's composure cracked. She turned sharply, coat whipping behind her, her lawyer trailing fast. The automatic doors swallowed them whole. Silence settled back into the room. Jackson exhaled slowly. his hand hovering near the boy's shoulder, but not touching. "You did nothing wrong," he murmured. The boy's lips parted, a whisper barely audible. "You stayed." Jackson swallowed hard. Yes, he stayed. And, for the first time, the battle had shifted in their favor. On record, in public, undeniable. The courtroom smelled faintly of polished wood and coffee gone cold. Jackson sat at the long table, the boy beside him with Monica's steady presence close by. Across the aisle, Evelyn adjusted her pearl necklace, lawyer whispering in her ear. Judge Reynolds entered, glasses perched low on his nose. "We're here for preliminary review in the matter of guardianship. Let's proceed." The lawyer launched first, polished words dripping with confidence. "My client has cared for the child since infancy. Mr. Hale interfered." Jackson's attorney cut in, sliding forward a thick file. "Your Honor, included are time-stamped logs, security footage, and sworn testimony from a neighbor, Mrs. King. They indicate a consistent pattern of neglect and coercive practices." Reynolds flipped through the file, expression tightening. "And the medical report?" Monica stood, her voice calm but firm. Photos of chemical irritation on his hands, consistent with cleaning agents, documented at intake. She laid the pictures before the court, neutral but undeniable. The boy fidgeted, clutching the rag tucked in his pocket. Jackson leaned close, whispering, "You don't have to say a word unless you want to." When the judge glanced toward him, the boy whispered, almost inaudible, "I don't want to go back." The courtroom stilled. Evelyn's lawyer objected, citing coaching, but the judge silenced him with a raised hand. "Noted. The child's statement is clear enough." After an hour of back and forth, Reynolds delivered the ruling. "Temporary placement remains with Mr. Hale. No contact from the guardian until full hearing. This court prioritizes safety over status." His gavel struck once, sharp and final. Evelyn stiffened, her painted calm unraveling. Jackson exhaled, shoulders easing for the first time in days. He glanced at the boy, who looked back with wide eyes, uncertain but lighter. Outside on the courthouse steps, reporters lingered, sniffing at the story. Jackson ignored them, keeping the boy close. Monica squeezed his shoulder. Facts spoke today, not fury. The boy whispered again, fragile but sure. "The judge." He listened. Jackson nodded, throat thick. "And he'll keep listening. So will I." The courthouse doors closed behind them, but the battle for trust was just beginning. That evening, the house glowed softer than usual. No boardroom lights, no ringing phone. Just the hum of the fireplace and the faint tune of a music box Monica had brought from her nursing bag. She wound it once, letting the lullaby fill the air. The boy sat cross-legged on the couch, holding a warm mug of milk in both hands. His eyes stayed on Jackson, studying, waiting for the moment the world might shift again. Jackson silenced his phone as it buzzed on the counter. His assistant's name flashed across the screen. Urgent meeting, investors waiting. He turned the device over, screen down. For once, the empire could wait. He pulled a blanket over the boy's shoulders. "This is your time," he said softly. The boy blinked, startled by the certainty in Jackson's voice. "You don't have to sit here. I know you're busy." Jackson shook his head. "Not tonight. Not while you're learning to rest." Slowly, the boy leaned back against the cushions. His fingers loosened around the mug, eyelids heavy. He didn't flinch when Jackson adjusted the blanket, didn't brace as if expecting harshness. Instead, he whispered, "You'll still be here if I wake up?" Jackson's chest tightened. "I'll be here," he promised. The lullaby wound down, notes fading into quiet. The boy's breathing slowed, evened out. For the first time, he fell asleep without jerking awake at every sound. Jackson sat in the armchair nearby, staring at the fire. He thought about all the rituals that had shaped his own life. Morning runs, late-night calls, endless travel. All hollow compared to this. A child's trust earned not with grand gestures, but with showing up at bedtime again and again. When Monica texted to check in, Jackson wrote only 3 words. He's sleeping peacefully. Trust wasn't built overnight. It was woven through the smallest of choices. A blanket tucked in, a call ignored, a promise kept. And tonight, the first fragile thread had been laid. Sunday morning sunlight poured into the kitchen, catching dust motes in the air. The boy sat at the counter, rag folded neatly in front of him. For days, he had refused to let it go. Today, though, something was different. "I want to wash it," he murmured. Jackson blinked, surprised. "The rag?" The boy nodded. "It doesn't have to stay dirty, right?" Monica, seated nearby with coffee, smiled gently. "No, sweetheart, it doesn't." She led him to the sink, showing how warm water and gentle soap could cleanse without burning. The boy rubbed carefully, watching the grime swirl away. His small shoulders lifted as if a weight had followed the dirt down the drain. When it dried, Monica cut a strip from the fabric and handed it back. "You don't have to keep the whole thing, but you can keep a piece." The boy stared at the strip, fingers tracing the frayed edge. Then he looked toward the stuffed bear Monica had given him on her last visit. Slowly, deliberately, he tied the strip around its neck in a bow. Jackson watched, throat tightening. The boy stepped back, studying his work. His voice trembled, but he spoke with certainty. "It helped clean the bad. Now it reminds me I don't live there anymore." Silence filled the room, heavy but holy. Jackson knelt to meet his eyes. "That's a brave choice. Symbols matter." The boy hugged the bear, ribbon bright against its fur. For the first time he smiled. Small, cautious, but real. Jackson knew then that healing wasn't just about protection. It was about transformation. The rag had once chained the boy to pain. Now, tied in a ribbon, it anchored him to hope. And Jackson, who had built his life around contracts and guarantees, realized this was the only vow that mattered. To keep showing up, to keep choosing care, until ribbon outweighed rag forever. The courthouse buzzed with low voices and the shuffle of papers. Jackson walked in beside the boy, who clutched the bear with the ribbon tied neatly around its neck. The symbol spoke louder than any speech he could give. Judge Reynolds entered, his presence quiet but commanding. "We're here to determine permanent guardianship and address pending charges." The prosecutor laid out the evidence first. Monica's medical notes, Mrs. King's testimony, Jackson's security logs. Each piece formed a pattern, undeniable and clear. Evelyn sat stiffly at the defense table, her polished exterior cracking as photographs of red, irritated hands were passed to the bench. Her lawyer tried to argue discipline and structure, but the words rang hollow. The judge raised a hand. "Order! This court does not equate coercion with care." Then came the boy's turn. He shifted in his seat, eyes darting toward Jackson for courage. Judge Reynolds leaned forward, voice softer. "You don't have to say much, son, but if there's something you want this court to hear, now is your chance." The boy's small fingers gripped the ribbon tighter. His voice trembled, but it carried. "I don't want to go back. I feel safe here." The judge nodded, pausing just long enough for the words to settle in the room. "Your voice matters," he said, firm yet kind. "And it has been heard." He delivered the ruling with clarity. Evelyn faced charges, her guardianship revoked. Temporary placement with Jackson became permanent custodianship, subject to ongoing oversight but affirmed by the court. Evelyn's face hardened, but the gavel's echo left no room for protest. Jackson exhaled, every muscle in his body releasing tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. He placed a steady hand near, not on, the boy's shoulder. "You did it," he whispered. The boy clutched the bear closer, ribbon bright as sunlight, his eyes brimming not with fear but with something new, belonging. For the first time, the future felt possible. The house no longer echoed with silence. Morning sunlight poured across the kitchen table where pancakes steamed, syrup dripping onto plates. The boy sat in his chair, bare with its ribbon propped beside him, laughing when Jackson flipped a pancake too high and nearly lost it to the floor. "Almost a disaster," Jackson joked, grinning. "Accidents happen here," the boy echoed back, a spark of mischief in his eyes. Those words, once a shield against fear, had become a family motto. After breakfast, Jackson helped him pack his school bag. Fresh notebooks, pencils sharpened, a lunchbox tucked neatly inside. The boy slid the bear in last, ribbon tied tight. At the gate, Jackson crouched, smoothing the boy's collar. "You're not just safe here, you're free to grow here." The boy nodded, face serious in the morning light. "I'll come back, right?" "Every day," Jackson promised. "This house waits for you." The school bus pulled up, brakes sighing. The boy climbed aboard, glancing back through the window until the street curved away. Jackson stood at the gate a long moment, then turned to the plaque he'd mounted the night before. Polished brass, fixed to the iron. It read simply, "You are safe here." Later that week, he called a press conference, not to defend himself or his company, but to announce a new fund supporting at-risk children, neighbors too often ignored until it was too late. Cameras flashed, but Jackson's voice never wavered. "This isn't charity," he told the crowd. "It's responsibility." At home that evening, the house hummed not with automation, but with human rhythm. Laughter, footsteps, music box melodies. For the first time in years, Jackson's home wasn't just smart. It was alive. And at its center was a boy who had turned a rag into a ribbon, and a man who had learned that the truest wealth wasn't measured in contracts or shares. It was found in the safety of belonging and the power of a promise kept.